Hey guys, so what I have here, this is the throttle body off of the Jeep. And I've taken it off the vehicle, obviously, and I've cleaned it up really well. I still need to, come in here with a cloth and do a little bit more cleaning. But what I've got going on is I've got an engine code, P0151, I think it is. And basically, that code points or can point to a number of different things. One of those things is the throttle position sensor, the idle air control valve, the vacuum pressure sensor, the map sensor, I believe it is, that connects over here. All of those can trigger it. A vacuum leak can trigger it. An exhaust leak can trigger it. It's so many different things. So I took the vehicle in, I did a little bit of checking. I know I had an exhaust leak, but it was after the catalytic converter. They did confirm that, yes, that was leaking. So I did decide to go ahead and get the exhaust from the catalytic converter back replaced. That's done. Car sounds a lot better, and I'll show that later. But basically what they did is they did a smoke test, and what they found was inside of the throttle body, it was leaking somewhere around the seals, which apparently is a somewhat common problem with these vehicles. Basically what happens is the shaft, turn this the right way around, the shaft here, you can see, you might even be able to hear it, has some play in it. And this is completely loose. There's absolutely no resistance whatsoever. So I found a video online, and I'll post it. But basically what they were saying is that because the contact, especially because this only rotates basically a quarter turn, the contact on this shaft essentially gets wear points. And you probably can't see it in the video, but if you hold this in your fingers and rotate it around, you can actually feel, and this one a little bit better over here, you can actually see the wear spots. And so what's happening is, number one, you get some air that's coming by on these points on each side. And here you can see again, just on the bottom half of this is really where this is wearing. And I don't know if you can really tell, but this is not level right here. Well, there's not really a good fix for this. There's no rebuild kits out there. It's actually quite difficult at this point. This is 2021 and this is a 2004 model. It's actually a little bit difficult to try to find even remands that are good. But I did find a video that said that the O-rings that are in here, and you can see this is pretty crusted up. In fact, as I pick at this O-ring, I mean, it literally is just falling apart. So the suggestion is that this is an A012 O-ring, is that you basically remove this and then you take the roller cage and move it to the outside and then put the new O-ring, and actually recommends putting two of them on the inside. So it's going to be a little bit tricky to get it to go on the inside, but that's what I'm going to do. And then I'm going to get, I've got some grease out in the garage, some synthetic grease, and I'm going to pack this bearing really, really well. Be sure it's lubricated. You can see it actually doesn't even turn very well at all. So I'm going to go in and I'm going to pack this really well with grease, get it all lubricated. I'm going to do the same thing on both sides and then put this shaft back in and see if I can get this leak fixed. And then I'm going to go ahead, just because the high mileage on it, I'm going to go ahead and replace the throttle position sensor, which actually accidentally broke when I was taking it apart. The plastic was brittle, so I've got to replace that anyway. But I'm going to go ahead and replace the idle air control valve as well as the map sensor that's over here. Just that way I know everything is good on it. I know I've got a nice clean throttle body. Everything's moving through here really well. Everything's sealed up. The good news was that the vacuum test, on the smoke test that they did on the vehicle, everything else came out clean. But I'm going to go ahead and just kind of pick this out. In fact, again, you can see as I do this, it is literally, there it goes, just falling out in chunks. So I'm going to do this. I'm actually going to take a vacuum and I'll see if I can vacuum out all these pieces. Be sure that there's nothing hanging around in the throttle body anywhere in any of the voids or cavities. Be sure everything is nice and clean, and kind of go around the rim here, and then you can see maybe on the video. May have to actually lubricate it up first. There we go. So get a little bit of movement there on the cage for the needles. So it did move a little bit. I'll have to, I think lubricating this up might probably be the first thing I need to do actually. But I'm going to go ahead and get these out of here, and then we will put in the replacements, which I actually need to go and get. I'm probably going to go ahead and use Viton O-rings. I'm going to go over to Harbor Freight, get a mix set which has those in there, and you can even see this is cleaned up a little bit, but on the throttle position sensor side, you can even see some of the carbon and everything that's kind of come back up through and has come through this shaft. This side doesn't look as bad. Now again, this has been cleaned up. But anyway, that's where we stand right now. And once everything's done, I'll go ahead and I'll use my my OBD link, and I'll also clear out my codes before I do anything else with it. And we'll cross our fingers that the code does not come back. By the way, I had already replaced, the code I was getting was actually only on bank 1, which was interesting. And I'd already replaced the O2 sensor. But so I know that that's good. And if you look at that, you just see how just totally shot that is. Just in pieces, no good whatsoever. Okay, so what I've got here is, you can see the bearings themselves have been covered in grease, and I've got the Viton O-rings that I got from Harbor Freight. So what I'm doing is, again, we want the O-rings, 2 of them, to be mounted from the inside so that it pushes that cage over to the outside. So what I'm doing is I'm actually, and the grease does help here a little bit, although it is slippery. What I'm doing is basically using the pick to gently get it into position. And what I found was going from the inside as a starting point, kind of getting it in place, and then once it's roughly in place, and you can see I do have a couple of starts and stops on both sides here. But once it's in place, what I then did was to go from the outside and basically just kind of draw a circle around, and that seats it. It's not super tight. It doesn't have to be super tight. The idea here is that when the shaft goes through, that it seats with that O-ring, and the O-ring is what is actually helping prevent the air from going through. So that's really the goal that we have here. And again, we're doing 2 on each side. By pushing that cage towards the outside, hopefully what will happen is those flat spots that are occurring on the shaft, hopefully those will actually be moved, and the actual needle bearings will hopefully seat better onto the shaft, and having the new O-rings will help to prevent the vacuum leak that we're getting, or the unmetered air coming through. And then, of course, number 3 on that trifecta is the use of the grease to help seal everything there as well. So I'm hoping that is going to be the ultimate fix when it comes to getting these in place. But that's what I did with it. This whole process here probably took me around maybe 10 minutes total. It is a little tricky to do, but all in all, it was not that difficult, and I definitely would encourage the use of a pick set like this. And these also came from Harbor Freight. I've had them for a while, but you can pick these up at Harbor Freight. They're extremely useful, especially having the different sizes. And then once I got them in there and did the test fit on the shaft, everything seems to, as we'll see, seems to work out well. All right, guys, so I've got the throttle body back together. I did take some video of trying to get the O-rings in, and I will put that in the video. But basically, it's just kind of tough to see. What you're really doing is you're taking both O-rings, and I did find that there's an O-ring on each side of the bearing, which makes sense. What you're really doing is, instead of having one on each side, you're pushing the bearing to the outside on both sides, and then you're putting both O-rings on the inside. And what that does is you're moving the pressure points that are on this shaft, you're moving them out. Now, obviously, this is not a 100% fix. At some point, it probably is going to leak again, but I did also, you can actually see I've got a little bit of here I need to clean up, but basically, I've also re-greased these as well, and I've greased them really well, tried to get it where it's nice and sealed. I've also gone ahead, you can see, I've gone ahead and replaced my 3 sensors, the map sensor, throttle position. This one I actually cracked when I was removing it. And then this is the idle air control valve. And one thing to note, I went ahead so I could clean this really well. There is a gasket that's in between this housing and the main housing. This gasket you can't really find anywhere. So I ended up getting just some RTV black gasket maker, and not the most ideal, but it'll work in this particular situation. But I've gone ahead and got that all sealed up. Everything should be ready to go. And I had already purchased this previously, a throttle body mounting gasket. So I have to pop that out when I do the install, but that'll of course go on the bottom here after I clean this up a little bit. But overall, looking at the shaft, I mean, everything seems to be nice and tight. It feels good. One thing that you can also do is when you put this shaft in without the sensor on the end, you actually shine a light through here. And before, I was able to see light coming through on this side. I can no longer see the light. So that's kind of funny actually. But anyway, I've gone ahead and got everything back together. So the next thing to do will be to actually put it on the vehicle. Now, I do need to let this RTV set up for a little bit. I'm gonna go ahead and mount this back on the car, but before I actually do any cranking or anything, I'm gonna go ahead and let the machine sit. I probably will go ahead and clear out the codes, and I'll show you that as I'm doing that. So anyway, got everything back together. Hopefully this takes care of it, and we'll see. All right, guys, let's get this thing back together. So let's see, here's my connectors. Take out my towel here, and got my gasket. So I'm gonna lay that down just like that, and got my screws hanging out over here. So what I'm gonna do is just slide that down. And actually, I didn't look up what the torque spec is on these, but these were not super tight. They don't need to be crazy tight on the vehicle. I know for a fact they were less than 35 foot-pounds because I used my Milwaukee, and I think it's rated at 35 foot-pounds. So we'll just get these started. And we'll do it in a crisscross. By the way, this is 10 millimeter for these four, and for all of the torques that are on the throttle body, it's a T20. And there is on the airbox, I don't know if you guys can see it, but on the airbox, this one is a 8 millimeter. Actually holds it in back here on the bracket. So we'll give these a snug. And that's probably good, because you're going into aluminum, of course. So get that on there. Find it. There it is. That's good. And by the way, the gasket down here is a Felpro, which when I bought all the parts last fall, when I did the initial work on the car, when I was doing that, I had gone ahead and bought the gasket because I figured I would, at a minimum, be cleaning the throttle body. Okay, those four are in. And we'll get our lines hooked up here. Okay. And free and clear, nice and tight. All right, that looks all good. So, we'll get this back on. And get this snug down over here. Okay, there we go. Zoom out a bit. And there it is. And again, this does not have to be super tight. One thing I was glad of when I had the exhaust checked was that the exhaust manifold was not cracked. In fact, I had two actual, there's an initial shop that did a diagnosis for me. They actually did it for free, which was nice of them. But they confirmed, or they said, that the exhaust manifold was not cracked. And then when I took it to the actual muffler shop, they said the same thing, which was good. So anyway, it's kind of nice to get good news like that of some sort. By the way, just for reference, the exhaust was about $300 for what they did. And they replaced everything from the catalytic converter going back, and then the three sensors was about $120 from Advance Auto. That was using a coupon code. And then the gasket, I've had the gasket for a while. I don't remember what the original cost was, but it's not that expensive. $2 or $3 at the most. And the O-rings for the complete set at Harbor Freight, I did get the Viton O-rings. And for that complete set, it was $10 with tax. So anyway, let's get this line back in there. That's the breather line. So we should be good. But one of the things they did as part of the smoke test course was that would have shown any kind of leaks in the system, which is good, because I have not replaced any of these hoses, although I can tell some of them have been replaced over time. But anyway, all right, let's clear the codes. Okay, for code clearing, what I'm using is an OBD-Link MX Plus. And I've had the MX, and then the MX Plus is what I currently have. This one is compatible with 4Scan, which, good name, 4Scan, which is used with my Ford. And it connects using Bluetooth. So let me get connected here. So let's see, turn the engine to the on position, and see if you guys can see this. All right, so let's go to Bluetooth, and I'm gonna go to the OBD link, be sure that connects. All right, we're connected, and now, remember where my cars folder is, there we go, and we'll go into the OBD link screen and get connected up here. Okay, so now I'm gonna read our codes, and you can see the 0171, the 0131. I think this is because of the tests that were run on it. So what I'm gonna do now is I'm gonna clear out the trouble codes. All right, so no codes detected, and see the engine light is on. So do it going this way. So now I'm gonna cycle the, and I don't remember if the light goes out with it just on this here. I think it stays on. So I'll have to actually crank it up. I'm still waiting on that RTV to cure. It's actually gonna be kind of warm today. So we'll come out later and we'll do a check of it, and we'll go from there. All right, guys, it's been a few hours. So we're gonna give the Jeep a test here. Let's see if she cranks up all right. Sounds good. And engine light did go off. Give this a second to run for a few minutes. You can hear it. Got a good, actually it's got a really good, nice throaty sound. Really strong. And just kind of show you underneath, you can see where the connection goes in. It's just a baseline muffler, nothing really special about it, but goes all the way from there. Now, in this particular model, there was another catalytic converter here. There's already two of them up front. There was another one here. That's been removed. So now we do get a little bit more throughput. I don't know if that'll actually mean more horsepower, but it does sound good, which is nice. So I'll have to drive it, but definitely does seem to be stable. Now, one thing that I was getting when I had that issue is the engine, particularly at idle, was really rough. So right now this is actually sounding pretty good. So anyway, well, good sign thus far.